Okay, let me write out the session as well. So because there's a power cuts, so some of you enter the lecture. Now we can see that here. So let's start discussing the quiz from the beginning. So well. So why RWD? I think first question is most of you have done. So it says what is unit test? Right. So let's see the answers. It says a type of software test which individual units are tested. So very good question answers. I can see that if you have written individual units like in a calculator. So the individual units are the multiplication, division, multiplication, subtraction. Those are the functions. So if you say that it is individual units, so you will get the full marks. So that's correct. So in a unit, what we are going to do is the smallest testable unit, individual unit. So this question is correct in that person. Let's take another person's answer. Yeah, individual units we are going to test it. So that is what we can see as an answer. So most of you have done the first question correctly. Smallest test that you can testable. So in a system, so that is correct. So you get the full marks if you get this kind of question in exam. So in the second question, so why we do need to use unit testing? So there's a question asked by like that. So let's see what are the answers. So make sure this all the codes meets quality standard before it is deployed. So that's good. And you have to verify whether the functions are working properly. So let's take another person's answer. Still people are writing it. Second person like this one. To identify you can't say errors. We can say logical bugs, logical errors. You have to say logical errors because if error can be many things, like compile errors, but those are not what we are going to test in a unit test. We are going to check the individual functions are working properly. So in that case, we have to say. So this is partially correct. You have to say individual functions are working properly. So you have to say like whether what kind of errors, whether it is a logical error or whether it is a compiler. Because compiler errors can be fixed using the compiler, but the logical errors you have to test it using a unit testing tool. But those are smaller testable units. Yes, let's see the answer. Yeah, quality standard is deployed. Yeah. Now it says common annotations in JVT. Now annotations are not version, right? If I ask what are the common versions available in JVT, you can say that 4 and 5. So the annotations are like this, right? At what are the annotations that you can see? At before and before each, and at test. Those are the annotations that you can see. So those are the annotations. So in that case, that part is wrong. So let's see how many of you have done that part correctly. Yeah, so these are the common annotations, right? At test, before, after class. Now this is Java JUnit version 4. But if you use version number 5, so you can see small differences there in that version number 5. So the difference is that you can say that after class is been replaced with after all, before class has been replaced with before all, and this is after each, before each, and the test. So that one is correct, but some of you have only completed the. Yeah, so this is correct. So then in the fourth question they ask, what are the advantages and disadvantages of unit testing? So let's see the answers. Yeah, so you can say fast, test cancellation, you can environmentally isolate it, you can flexible, and you can use it as a documentation. And you can see the disadvantages. If you write unnecessary unit tests, it can lay maintenance cost. So that will be the answer. So this is very good, right? It encourages modular programming, increase the developer products. So the difference is time consuming. That is the problem. Because we can see that if you want to write a normal case, you can write only the test. But now if you want to write several unit tests, so you can see that time has been taken much because today in lab also we have to take some time to create the unit test. So if you just develop only the code, then it is fine. But if you want to do testing as well, then it takes some time to do it. So most of the bugs we can't catch, right? Some bugs we can't capture. For example, load testing. Like for example, if you want to test a server based on the load, if you test it for several cases, it might be true. But sometimes if you try to do a transaction like billions transaction for 10 seconds, then you have a problem with your uh, unit testing. So that is a disadvantage because it cannot capture all kind of errors. So it can only capture the logical errors which have some limited outputs. But if we can't test load of a server, that cannot be tested. Like so let's say I'm trying to log into a Moodle server and to check whether the login function working for millions of users. But for 5 or 6 users, then it is fine. But if you try to add millions of users, you will see that it will not be able to register that kind of user. You can see this before all, before each. These are the life cycle they are expecting. Yeah. So draw the execution order diagram. So that execution diagram, I think some of you have done it correctly. This is the diagram. No, this is actually the JUnit 5 one, right? Execution diagram is like this. Before all, then before each, then test, then after each, then after all. So this is the diagram. So you have to circle it out for exam, but this one is partially correct. Like then don't put annotation, just the order you can put it. So if you just put the order that is correct, like this is also fine, but yeah. So compare to the asset equals and asset null. So I can see the difference. If you use the asset equal method that we discussed in the lecture and the due, so this is to check whether the two data types are like the values are getting equal. But if you use asset null, I want to check whether that object is actually null or not. So that we can test it using asset null. So that's the difference between the asset null and the asset equals. So I want all of you to try the second part of the quiz. That I want you to see it. Yeah, some of you have done it correctly, right? So I'll give you some time. So this one is correct, right? So you provided the order. Still are completing it. So now the time is 2 o'clock. So I will be giving about 15 minutes. Try to complete the second section. Then we'll discuss the answer. Try to complete it. Yeah, let's see some of your answers. Yeah, so that like what we discussed in the labs, you import the con class, so and the API, so it gets marks for this. But this is a mistake. The mistake is you can't use the same name as the model that you are going to import it, right? That will be conflicting. So you can say that con test, like a con unit test. So you have to use special name for this. Because don't use the name given in the question. So question says it's con. So don't use the same name here. You have to use a different name. Now this is the import statement is correct, but the class name should be like con unit. So then you can see that con has been created. So this is very good. And here you can see a semicolon is missing. But the idea is good. And you put the values, right? So you can see the here you have constructor. But here this doesn't have a constructor, right? So you have to set one by one because there's no constructor, just the volume method. So here you get the answer into that. But the problem is if you call this method, it is a void, right? If you say dot volume method, so this method is void. So in that case, what you need to do is imagine this class is there. Let me write this part. So let's open the NetBeans. Then try to do that question. So BC is a little bit slow. I think you have testing part. The logical idea is correct, right? You just try to use the theories that you have learned in the lecture and try to get the values and have it done. So some of you also have tried to do that. I think. This one is correct. Yeah, you get the volume correctly. Yeah, only need to fix this part. I think most of you have tried to do it, right? So it's good. Yeah, I think that idea. Correct. Let's try to create a new class. Yeah, in the same project, I'm going to create a class. Let's try to create a class for phone. Copy the code of the phone. So this is the code given. So that's not construct here, right? So that is what we have to set it manually, right? So then in that case, you can go to this package, shape testing. I can create a new unit test. Shape unit, let's say one unit. So don't use same name as phone. Let's say phone unit test. So just import the package. So org dot unit Jupyter API aspect. So then import so code.com. So that is what we have imported that. So after that, you have to write this value. So as you mentioned, you have to say that some of them mention it correctly. Yeah, so you need to create the static variable for the phone. One and answer. So public. So let's start with the first method at before all. So see, this is a static method. Public static void create font. You can say C1 is equal to new font. At after before each. So this should be a void method. Sign. Create a method. You can say answer. Now we need to call this method, right, to get the sign value. C1 dot. You can call this volume method to get the volume. Then, because this is a void method, you can see this void method you can't assign to variable. So in that case, you call it and get the value to the volume variable. So I can now say answer is equal to C1 dot volume. Yeah. So now here the volume is actually not accessible to the outside because we are in a different package. So let me make it public. Otherwise, the volume is not accessible. So C1 dot again access the volume variable. Now the answer is now there. So what you have missed here is, so you write the answer. So some of you missed this is because this is a void method. You call the method and get the values in the next line. Because otherwise you can't directly assign it because this is a void method. So then you can add test, and so that is for void test volume. So then you can say, now we can say assertion. The actual expected value we can say. Now the problem is we need to put some values, right? Otherwise the values are not also set. So in this case, before you calculate the volume, make sure you assign the values like C1 dot. This should be public because I need to access it to the outside of the package. If you are writing the same package, no problem. Because I have created two different folders. That is the reason that it's not accessible. So I made it public and say C1 dot height is equal to 7. C1 dot radius equal to 10. So let's say 50, like an example. I'm expecting 50, but the answer I got is something like this. Then you can write after it to clean the values. What you need to do is you can set the answer null, but not only the answer. You can set other values also null, right? Because these values also we have set there. So that's the difference between the tutorial activity that we have done today and the morning lecture. So you can see we have separately assigned the values. And finally, in our last method, you can see that after all, this should be a static variable, static delete. So we just set that C1 equal to. Most of you have done that last part correctly, but you have missed this section. Assigning values, you have to set it one by one because there's no constructor. So if you don't have a constructor, you have to set one by one the values and make the variables public. Right, so that will be the end of that tutorial. So next week is our last lecture where we learn about the exceptions. So after that, we'll do a revision and finish our activities. So those who scored less than 10 marks, make sure write a 6 or something. Right, so that's all. Right, so I will be uploading this recording session, so you can watch it later. So come and complete the activities if you got to the next. So thank you very much. See you in the next.